Hey there, I'm Andy Harwood. I'm co-owner of the Vaz+Harwood Real Estate Team at Keller Williams Premier Realty, and I'm here to give you a quick high-level overview of the process of buying a house, at least in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, and with the Vaz+Harwood Team. So this is how we do it, and I want to emphasize this is a high level, broad strokes kind of view. Your situation may have a little bit of differences, but generally speaking, this is the process, start to finish, for most transactions and most people. So diving right in, the first thing that you are going to need, or the first person I should say that you're going to need, is a realtor. You're doing exactly the right thing right now by looking at realtors, maybe asking your friends. Maybe you came here through a referral. That's a great way to find a realtor, somebody who's done a good job for somebody that you know. Starting out with a conversation with a realtor is your first step. And if you like that person and it's a good fit, then you've got part of your team. You're building a team, so the realtor is probably the first step of the first person on your team, and then the second person that you're going to need is a mortgage person. And you notice I said person, not company. The company is important too, and we'll get to that in a sec. But our biggest advice on hiring or choosing a mortgage person and company is to have a person who you trust, who's here locally, who comes from a good referral, somebody that we've worked with, or somebody who you know has worked with and done a good job. Just like realtors, there's a ton of people out there doing mortgage. There's a ton of options, and it's very, very confusing for the public. I wouldn't know any of this stuff if I didn't work in real estate every day. So having that mortgage person who's somebody who you're having a conversation with, who is helping you with your pre-approval, with your finances, is so essential, and helping you through the strategy of how you can be a successful home buyer at this stage in your home buying process, whether and especially if you're a first-time home buyer, but at any stage of the game. What do you need to do to get from A to B in life, and what is the best strategy or the best strategies for you? There might be options available to you, including down payment assistance programs or various types of loan products. And there are many pros and cons to these things. So back to where I started, you need a person, a really good person who you can meet with in person or have a Zoom call with or just go over things with, versus somebody like in a call center who's just answering calls. Does that make sense? So you're assembling this team of your realtor and your lender, and we're going to work hand in hand. Now, we don't personally need to know about your finances. We don't dig into that. We don't go to that side of it, but the lender certainly does. So all we need to know on our end, and what we're going to stay in touch with the lender and you about, is things like how much you're pre-approved for, and what type of loan is it probably going to be, and maybe some broad strokes about down payment percentage and things like that, so that we'll have an idea how to approach an offer when the time comes. So segueing into that, you've got your realtor and you've got your lender, and now we'll know what you're pre-approved for because you've had a conversation with the lender, and we can at that point get you set up on a home search. Now you might be asking, why do we need a realtor's home search? We've got Zillow, we've got all these other apps that we're using. That is totally fine, and if you like Zillow or other apps, you can certainly keep using them. But here's the caveat, and this usually makes sense when I explain it. So like the Zillows of the world, they have to take all of the different MLS systems and kind of aggregate them together. So it works, but it's not necessarily the most accurate inventory list of what's actually out there at the moment. So what we do, We have a system that realtors use. You might have heard of it, called MLS. And don't be confused too, because there's a bunch of branded companies and things like that out there that might say MLS Online, or I don't know, something like that. The MLS is the realtor's actual proprietary database of the houses that are for sale in a particular area. So ours is called North Star MLS. And what we can do on our end is we can set you up with a home search that will be accurate to your price point. We can, and bedrooms and bathroom needs, and maybe square footage, geographic area. We can put in municipalities, school districts, counties. We can draw. A lot of times I draw a polygon or rectangles on the map, or even put in like a radius. So we have a lot of ways that we can do a search. But what that search is going to do is it's going to kick out an email. Sometimes if it's more of a normal search and we have quite a few houses on it, we just have it send you an email daily. Sometimes if there's a very, very narrow search and there's only a few houses, I'll have it send you an email whenever a new house appears. That way you know that there's a new listing and you should check that. But anyway, you'll get the email and you'll have a list of houses. And of course, not all of these houses will be a potential fit for you. Sometimes they'll be old houses that, I mean, when I say old, I mean, maybe they've been on the market a while for a reason, just saying. But you'll get that list of houses, and then you can look through them and let us know if there's anything that interests you. We find that it's usually better if the buyer looks at the list and goes through the houses and sees what interests them. We're not really here to say, oh, I think you should buy this house, or I think you should buy that house, especially not in the beginning. When we're first starting a search, we really want to know what houses pique your interest on the list. And so we ask our buyers to look at that, send over the addresses, and then we can take a look at them and see if there's anything on our end that we notice that maybe you wouldn't notice because you don't work in real estate. And then we can hopefully set up showings for all or some of those and get you into all the houses that you want to see that make sense for you. And then we just kind of continue that process. We might show a house or a couple houses or a tour of houses. And then if none of those are a fit or we need to see more houses, we just keep going on that process. We try to make ourselves as available as we can because things can happen in real estate pretty quickly. And one thing we want our buyers to do is really make yourselves available too. You're going to need to take time off work for this because, especially during the winter months, it's really hard to see houses in the evening because it's dark and we can't hardly see roofs, foundations, all of that kind of thing. So this is a sidebar. But one good piece of advice when you're starting to look for a house, especially as a first-time home buyer, but any point in the process, really understand that you're going to have to put your head in the game. You're going to have to get some new skills in terms of what this process demands of you, no matter how good and how accommodating and fun your realtor can help make this. You have to get your head in the game and commit to the process too. Because things can happen very quickly in real estate, especially if a new listing comes on the market and we're in kind of what we call a hot market. It could get multiple offers and you could have to make a decision pretty quickly. And it's a part of our job we don't really enjoy, like having the feeling that we might be, I don't want to say pressuring people, but just the situation is adding pressure because we might have, a day to think about it, or maybe not even that, depending on how quickly the seller wants to make a decision. So point being, you get the list of houses, let us know what you want to see, and we'll get you in as expediently as we can, just because we don't want to lose any opportunities for you. So what happens when we walk into a house and this is the one, you want to make an offer? This is all very exciting, and the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to call the agent and we're going to ask if they have any offers, if we don't know that already, and maybe some other things like, does the seller have a preferred closing date, or is there anything else that you can tell us that might help us to understand what we would need to do to make an offer that would be potentially successful. So this is where I want our buyers to understand there's no cookie cutter approach to an offer. There's a number of factors that interplay with each other, and it's our job to figure out what would make a successful offer for our buyer. Some of these factors could be what the market's doing at the moment. Is it a really hot market for listings? Are they moving quickly? Are we looking at multiple offers? Do they have an offer already or offers on the house? Have they called a time for highest and best, which is when any offers are due? How badly do you want the house? Is this just perfect? It checks all the boxes, and Andy and Sherilyn let's try not to lose this one if we don't have to. That might be a different offer than if it's one where, well, we'll try, and if we don't get it for the right price, we're okay with it. I don't usually encourage that kind of offer making because it's pretty hard to make a mortgage payment every month on a house you're kind of lukewarm about to begin with. But it can happen. Anyway, lots of different things that can affect how we might structure an offer that would be right for you for that particular house. So we're going to put your offer together. It doesn't take very long for us to do that. That might be something that would take us an hour or two. But it could take more if you need to talk to the lender and talk a little bit more about the numbers and get a more accurate estimate and all that kind of thing. Now, some people know their pre-approval really well and they're comfortable in a range. And some people are, a little more tight on their finances, and depending on what the taxes are on the house or, some other factors, maybe if we need to go up to win the offer, that might be a consideration. And it could be very, very important to talk to your lender at that point in the process and just really know, are you going to be comfortable with the cash to close? Do you have the money for inspection and earnest money? And we'll talk about those in a sec. But anyway, we're going to put this offer together in a way that makes the most sense for you. You'll talk to your lender at this point, and then we'll have you sign everything. We'll send you a signing document request for all of the offer paperwork and go over any questions that you have. And then we'll submit that offer over to the other agent, who's the listing agent for the property representing the seller. Now, in our favorite best case scenario, a beautiful situation, it would be if the house does not have another offer and they just like your offer, it's good, maybe it's asking price or maybe it's acceptable. Whatever the situation may be, they're happy, they accept the offer. That's a very simple situation. And then we have hopefully a couple of very happy parties, including you, our buyer. What also can happen, and this happens in that kind of hot market that I mentioned, sometimes there are multiple offers, and this can be a stressful situation for our buyers. And here's how we handle it. One way is, again, we want to make the offer that you're comfortable with and makes the most sense to you. And sometimes when a house does get multiple offers, what our buyers want is they want to win that house. So we have a number of strategies that we've used very successfully for many clients that have the best chance of putting that offer to the top, if possible, or at least giving you the best possible chance that you have of getting the house. And then the hard part is we have to send the offer over after you've signed it, and we have to wait for the highest and best timing to come, and however many other people might make an offer to, and then the seller will make a decision. And sometimes in that time period, we have a chance to update your offer. Maybe if they get a couple of other offers and it's more competitive than we thought it would be, you might have a chance to do something that maybe you wouldn't do before, but now knowing it's more competitive, we can change it. Sometimes we get that chance and sometimes we don't. But that's just another way that things can go, is a multiple offer situation. Now, another situation could be where they like most of your offer. Maybe it's not a multiple offer situation, but they like most of your offer, but maybe there's a term or two that they want to make a counter offer on. It could be the price, it could be the closing date, it could be something in the financing terms. It could be something like a rent back that they want because they want more time to live there after closing. There's a lot of things that are negotiable in a real estate transaction. So if there's a counter, as it's called, then we one thing I want our buyers to know is that we don't hatch our own deals and then come back to you with it all figured out. We take any information, any counter, any sort of negotiation like that, and we bring it to you with our professional guidance so that you're always the one making the decision with full knowledge and understanding of what the pros and cons for that would be with our professional guidance. So you can make the decision how you want to respond to that. We'll help you with it. And then we go back to them with your counter. Maybe that's an agreement or maybe it's something else. Sometimes we've got to do this a couple times to get it there. But then when we do, regardless of how this played out, we'll have an accepted deal. And that just means that the house is, we have signed paperwork, a signed purchase agreement contract, and things are proceeding to the next step, which almost always would be the inspection contingency. So at this point, when we have a signed offer, we're going into the inspection contingency, and a couple of things are going to happen at this point on the buyer's side. One is that you're going to submit the earnest money. We're going to send you, in most cases, an electronic link, which is a secure payment portal, to submit your earnest money. Now, the earnest money is usually about 1% of the offer. Sometimes we encourage our buyers to do more, especially if it's a multiple offer situation. And we want to encourage you to make your offer more competitive. Now, what is the earnest money? It's not an additional payment. It's part of your down payment that you would be paying anyway, but it's held in escrow. Where is it held? It's held at the listing agent's brokerage, not ours. So their broker has a special account called an escrow account, and they're going to hold that in escrow, and then that's going to get credited back to you, the buyer, at closing. And in many cases, that earnest money would be refundable to the buyer if something goes wrong in the transaction, and I'll go over that shortly. In some rare cases, it could be forfeited to the seller if the buyer doesn't perform on the contract. So, so this ties into the other thing. Remember, I said there are two things: is the earnest money getting submitted and held by the listing broker, and then the other thing is the inspection and the inspection contingency. So we have a signed contract, we've done the earnest money, and now the inspection contingency starts. When does it start? It starts the day after all of the paperwork is signed. So if we sign everything today and we have the final acceptance date today, the inspection contingency period starts tomorrow. And inspection contingencies are usually 5 to 7 days these days. They could be shorter, they could be longer, but that's just kind of an industry norm that we're seeing these days. That's enough time to hire a private home inspector, which we have good referrals for, but you can hire anyone you want to. They're not our company or anything like that. You could hire anybody, but we do have excellent referrals who all our customers have been very, very happy with. They do a thorough buyer's home inspection. Most buyers want to do a radon test and a sewer scope as well. Occasionally there's a property that a buyer wants to do a mold test if there's a particular concern for that, or a couple of other things or options. But generally, it's an overall home inspection. They check the mechanicals, they check the roof, the foundation, the windows, the appliances, all that stuff in the house. And then often they do a sewer scope and a radon test as well. And so during that inspection contingency period, remember I said it's usually around 5 days to 7 days, something in that range. That's your time period to get the inspector in, which will help with, and to make sure that you want to proceed with buying the house. And if you're not happy with things and you need to get out of this deal, then that inspection contingency period is the time to do it, because we can send a cancellation if we need to and get your earnest money 100% refunded, and you're out of the deal. And what you've lost is some time and the cost of the home inspection, which is probably $600 to $900, give or take, as of right now. 2025 is when I'm recording this. So it doesn't happen very often, but occasionally there's a house that it looked good, we thought it was going to be fine, and it's either got a major deal breaker item that we can't come to terms about, or we can't fix, or maybe it just has too many things that are an issue and you need to cancel. We can get you out of it. We just need to do it during the inspection contingency period. So generally speaking, after that inspection contingency is done, we probably cannot get your earnest money back if you were just to arbitrarily cancel and say, well, I changed my mind now, I don't want the house anymore. The seller's probably going to be able to keep your earnest money. Now, before we go on from this process, I want to just talk a little bit more about inspection and what the purpose of inspection is and kind of how that works. So inspection is not an opportunity for the buyer to get the seller to fix every last little thing that's wrong with the house, especially if it's an older house. We expect, and it is normal to see on inspection reports, almost always a few electrical things, a few plumbing things, especially older houses, even newer houses. That's almost never a report that doesn't have some things on it. Most of the time, that is not a reason to not buy the house. If we bail on this one, we're going to end up with another house that has a few more things on the inspection report. So sometimes buyers panic over that a little bit because the excitement of buying the house is now kind of tampered down because they get this report back and it's got all this stuff on it. Well, that's the inspector's job. That's literally their job, to tear the house apart and to show you every little crack and every little thing that's wrong with the house. And so what do you do with that information? Well, one purpose of the home inspection is just to have a thorough understanding of the house. Where's the water shut off? How do you turn off the hose bibs in the winter if you need to? How does the heating and HVAC system work? Just understand the house and understand the future maintenance needs of the house too. Home ownership is always going to involve expenses and budgeting some money for expenses, and especially when people go from renting to owning a home, sometimes it's a mental adjustment to just understand that, yeah, you have to fix things, and the roof will eventually have to be replaced, and all this kind of thing. So the inspection should give you a really good idea, and you can talk to the inspector too about what the overall home maintenance cost here is. Is it reasonable? Is it within kind of normal parameters, or are we looking at a house that has too many things that are going to add up too much and too quickly for you? And then the other purpose of the home inspection is just for major deal breakers. Is there something that's going to be a massive expense with this property that is going to make it prohibitively expensive for you to own it, that maybe you're going to have to fix way too soon? Sometimes we see a sewer issue, and that's why we recommend a sewer scope. Those projects can be upwards of $10,000. So that is often an issue that if there is a significant problem, we can negotiate that to be fixed because the seller probably can't sell the house without it if there's a major deal breaker issue. But sometimes we have an obstinate seller who just won't agree to fixing something or making a concession, and then we're kind of stuck. That's why we have that inspection contingency to get out of it. Now, the most um, uh, likely things that we can get negotiated for you on a home inspection are health and safety related things. So if there's something that is a hazard that wasn't known previously before we made the offer, or something that's broken or dangerous that we didn't know about, those are the kind of things that we have the best possibility to get a concession on or the seller to fix. Now, I mentioned concession. I want to dive into this really quick again as a little sidebar. We do have a couple of options when we ask the seller for things. We could ask them to fix things, or we could ask them for a price concession. And I much like the price concession more in many cases, maybe not all cases, but in a lot of cases. Think about this for a second. The seller they're on their way out of this house and it's going to be yours. If we can only control so much on a home inspection in terms of what we ask them to do. So we hope they'll do a good job if we ask for a repair or them to do something. If it's a pretty straightforward repair, like it's just kind of an XYZ type of thing, hire a licensed electrician to do this and that, it should be fine. But sometimes buyers want the seller to do things that are going to involve perhaps some judgment on the seller, and it could get done right or it could get done not quite up to the way you would want it. We really think it's generally speaking, if you can handle a price concession, we can do this with a seller contribution to buyer's costs in many cases, which will allow the seller to give you a credit at closing. And it's literally less money that you have to bring to closing as the buyer. So that should put the money back in your pocket to fix or address the item that you want addressed in order to be happy moving forward with the property. And again, this is all very case by case, so I'm just giving you the broad strokes. But I want our buyers to know that the seller contribution to buyer's costs is an option, and that's a very clean and reliable way to deal with a problem. If we need to negotiate anything like we just talked about in inspection, this is the time when we do it during the contingency. And then if we need to sign an amendment with something on it, we do that. And now we really have a finished deal because the offer's been accepted, we're through inspection, you're happy, you're moving forward, and you're buying the house, and your earnest money is what we call hard. It's not going to be refundable at that point, with one exception, which I'll get into now. So there is still a financing contingency in most offers if you're using a mortgage or you're going to be taking out a mortgage. If you were to, heaven forbid, lose your job or the lender was not able to complete the financing, generally there's a financing contingency through most of the rest of the offer. Sometimes in a lot of offers there is a kind of a stop to that financing contingency closer to the end of the transaction, just to protect the seller to, if you were selling a house, you wouldn't want something to go wrong in the last couple of days and then not even be able to keep the earnest money. So there are a couple of options we have when we write an offer on how the earnest money is handled and how the financing contingency works. And that can be very case by case too, depending on how competitive we needed to make the offer and what your financing picture looks like and kind of what the risks and benefits are. But generally speaking, just know that there's a financing contingency, and a good lender is going to know if there's a problem coming up, maybe with your financing. It happens so rarely, I hate to even bring it up. But I just want our buyers to know there's a financing contingency through most of the rest of the offer time period. So last thing before we get to closing, there's an appraisal that the lender does. The lender is sending an appraiser to the house to make sure that the house is worth what the mortgage is being taken out on it for. In most cases, the appraisal is nothing to worry about. It's kind of a rubber stamp thing. The only time we get worried about it is if there's a property where we had to go higher in order for you to get it, maybe significantly higher, and maybe the appraiser won't be able to find the other properties, the comps, to justify the price. And we'll let you know if that's a situation that we have a concern about. We have very few appraisal problems, so most of the time that's just kind of a formality. But it's good for buyers to know that that's one last thing in the process is the appraisal. And then we're heading right to the closing date. So we book a final walkthrough and we meet you at the house. Most of our buyers like us to take a picture. We have a namaste sign, which means hello and goodbye to your new home. And we take a fun picture. If you don't want it, we don't have to do it. But in any case, the most important thing is the final walkthrough. And we usually do that on the day of closing, maybe an hour before closing, so that we can have one last chance to look at the house just before we close. And 99% of the time, there's no issue whatsoever, but it's a due diligence step for you as the buyer with us to see the house one last time and make sure, maybe there was a garage that was full of stuff. Did they clean it out? We try to verify those things in advance, but it's still necessary to see the property one more time. So we see the property, maybe do a photo if you want that, and then head straight to closing, which is at the title company. And closing these days shouldn't take more than half an hour to an hour at the most. And you get the keys right at the end of closing, and the house is yours. And it's a wonderful, fun day and celebration, and so we're always so happy, and really that's about it. Now, how long does this process take, start to finish? Generally, the baseline is about a month from making the offer to closing. 30 days is kind of typical. It can be done quicker. A lot of lenders can do it. It often comes down to the lender. Can they do it quicker? But a lot of lenders can do it in 3 weeks if necessary. That's a very fast and tight turn. But 30 days is kind of normal. 45 to 60 days is not unheard of too. If the seller needs more time to move out, often it's the sellers that kind of drive the closing date because they're selling the house, and they might have factors on their end that drive that too. So that's about it for the whole process in broad strokes. There's one other thing that I didn't mention at the beginning that's important. When you work with a realtor, we'll ask you to sign buyer representation documents, and that'll include how we're compensated too. And these can be a bit confusing to the public. We're not allowed to do showings anymore without buyer rep. And before that law was changed, rule was changed, we didn't do it anyway because we wanted all of our buyers to have proper disclosure and have signed a contract with us so that we owe them fiduciary duties, and we've done the contract that we're supposed to do. Because if we didn't do that, we would have to send the offer paperwork and the buyer rep paperwork at the same time, and then it's just a bad process. So it is a rule now that before we start any showings, we do buyer rep paperwork, So we try to do that as soon as a buyer indicates that they want to work with us. We get that over to you. And the way that we're paid is by the seller. Now, the buyer rep paperwork can be a little confusing because it says that the buyer is going to owe us, but it's reduced by what the seller is offering. So the way we do it on our team, the Vaz+Harwood team, is we have rarely had a seller that was not offering reasonable compensation that's acceptable to us for our work. It just doesn't happen that often. It's barely even worth mentioning. But there could be some cases where a seller is not offering reasonable compensation, and then firstly, they're going to probably have some trouble selling that house because of that. And then we will need to ask the buyer for something to make up part of the difference at least, so that it will cover our work. Again, it doesn't happen very often. In 99.9% of cases, the buyer is not paying us directly. It's coming from the seller. So don't even worry about that for now. And that's the bulk of our compensation. And then we have a administrative fee along with that. That's a few $100s. But the buyer pays at closing. So here's the good part for you as the buyer. We do all of our work on spec. We don't get paid at closing. We don't bill you hourly. So if we show you 40 houses and you don't end up buying a house, we don't even get paid for it. So the seller is only paying, and you're only paying us that relatively small administrative fee at closing. So it's really a great thing for buyers because we can help you. We can help first-time home buyers without you having to do some kind of a cash outlay in order to have professional help and services with this. So of course there's probably more things to talk about, but that's what we have an in-person consultation for. When I say in-person, it could be over Zoom. But we would love to meet you if you're thinking about buying a house, and would love to go over your situation personally. Please book an appointment with us, and feel free to ask us any questions. You can text us or call us or email us, and we are just here to help with real estate. I hope this video was helpful, and thank you so much for watching. Again, this is Andy Harwood with the Vaz+Harwood team.